late start tonight. So we will, let's see. Read the district mission statement. Jimmy, would you please read it for us?
Yes. Ipswich Public Schools aspires to empower all students to be global citizens who are effective communicators, analytical problem solvers, and savvy consumers of information. We propose to do this through an emphasis on communication, critical thinking, creativity, self-management, perseverance, and collaboration. Students will be active partners in authentic learning, offering voice and choice, and demonstrating competency.
Thank you. Announcements this evening. The next school committee meeting will be held on Thursday, February 29th at 7 p.m. in the Middle School High School Ensemble Room. The tri-board meeting will be held on Wednesday, February 28th it's actually at 7 p.m. This says 7:30. So it's at 7 p.m. in Meeting Room A at Town Hall. The middle school, high school will be closed tomorrow, February 9th, for building repairs. And finally, schools will be closed Monday, February 19th through Friday, February 23rd for February vacation. All district offices will be closed on Monday, February 19th. Additionally, I have just a couple other quick announcements. We announced this at our last meeting. We are accepting letters of interest for a representative to the Whittier Tech School Committee. The school committee is in charge of appointing that position, and the current representative's term is up at the end of March. So we will be accepting letters of interest through next week, and we hope to interview and appoint someone in March. And also, lastly, we have 2 openings on the Payne Grant Committee. We have a community at-large representative and a local business rep. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. We have an agenda item on that, but I just wanted to announce those openings as well. Any other announcements? Special acknowledgements?
Yes, I have 2 this evening. First, I'd like to acknowledge Michael Coelho, our Director of Fine Arts here at the high school. He is a 2-time Grammy-nominated Music Educator of the Year award winner. He was a top 5 finalist this year, so very proud of him for that accomplishment. We had a little celebration for him this morning in his office when he got here, so I just wanted to give him a shout out. And then the second one is to all the members of our school counseling staff. This is School Counselor Appreciation Week. I want to acknowledge all of their hard work, especially with the uptick in the mental health issues that we've been facing the last couple of years. So thank you to all of them.
I have a couple as well. I wanted to just acknowledge the Ipswich High School play that was put on, I believe, last weekend. It was Clue, and it was in a theater in the round format, which was, it seems like, the first time maybe we'd ever done that, so that I think was really well received. And I just want to say that I'm just so glad that we could put on a performance this year. Not we, but the drama department could put on a performance this year. I know there was a lot of doubts in the community that we wouldn't be able to do that. So I also want to acknowledge Mr. Coelho and the staff for putting that together this year. And also, I want to acknowledge the Ipswich High School girls track team for their recent achievement of becoming the Cal Baker Division champs for the track team. And it happened on Girls and Women in Sports Day, which was pretty cool. So congratulations to that team. Any other special acknowledgements? All right, I don't have remarks from the chair tonight, so we'll move on to public comment. Do we have any public comment tonight? All right, we're making up time. All right, so at this time, I would like to, let's see, I don't really want to open the public hearing before 7:20, so could we bump that?
Yeah. I may have missed the high school report, but that could be new business
Okay.
that he could just do now.
Could we do new business now? Okay. So we're going to take some agenda items out of order because we don't want to open the public hearing until 7:20, and we inadvertently left the high school student representative report off the agenda. So we are going to call that new business. So we will do new business now. And so, does anyone have new business, Jimmy? Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. My report tonight is basically going to echo what we talked about in our advisory council on February 2nd. Our meeting started off with approving the diversity mural from the art club, DI team, multilingual leaders, and GSA clubs that are putting together a mural that will depict our mascot with different flags representing nationalities and identities that will be hung up and moved around the school to just show Tiger Pride and all the different students that make up the school. Kind of similar to what the elementary schools always have. They have a mural, they have different pieces like that that kind of involve every student, and that's kind of what it seems like they're trying to do as well. We further discussed raising school spirit, potentially hosting a school-wide social event to open or to celebrate the opening of the new basketball court and outdoor spaces in partnership with the class officers of all the 4 grades. Additionally, we talked about paying grant opportunities and how the high school could benefit from blue bikes or some other activities potentially being funded by a paying grant. We also discussed the parking lot situation. Some students are having trouble finding parking spaces in the morning, but it was discussed that you're not allowed to park in the visitor parking because that is obviously left for visitors. So Mr. Mitchell has extended student parking down School Street as well if needed, but do not park in the visitor parking. And that's it. Questions
When is
or
the
anything?
basketball court and open outdoor learning center opening? Do you know?
It's supposed to be this spring, but I don't know if that's still on
I
track.
don't know if we
That's
have
what Mr. Mitchell
a date. I don't know if we have a date for it yet.
Okay.
Yeah. Obviously pending that, we'll see if we can squeeze that in this year, or if that will bump to
Okay.
all of next year.
Questions for Jimmy or comments? Okay, thank you. Things are going to ramp up for you as a senior in the next few months.
Yes,
You're gonna have a lot going on. All right, so that was new business. Do we want to now do a quick reappointment of the FEPI's committee representative before we open the public hearing? So we're kind of, right? Is that, okay, so.
Welcome.
All right, so this is, I gotta scroll down because we're taking things out of order. So tonight we have with us Walter Zagrobski. Thank you. Who has served on the FEFI committee for 3 years, and he's up for reappointment. So as a reminder, we, the school committee, are responsible for appointing 2 members to the FEFI committee. There's, school committee has 2 appointments, finance committee has 2 appointments, select board has 2 appointments, and there's a lifetime FEFI. So there's 7 people. The FEFI members do have some of the stuff I just learned, so I'm hoping that maybe you'll hear it for the first time too. FEFI members, with the exception of that lifetime appointment, have a term limit of 2 terms, so a total of 6 years. So, and sort of in a nutshell, this committee is responsible for managing the trust and distributions to the school committee and interacting with the trust financial advisors and being really transparent with us and with the community about how the trust is going and the distributions, et cetera. So I reached out to several members of the FEFIs just for some feedback, because I want to just make sure that we're not automatically reappointing people without sort of doing our due diligence and making sure that we, make sure that people that we're reappointing are doing a good job. So I did hear back. I reached out to 3 members of the FEFIs. I did hear back from 2 of them. One was an email and one was a phone call. They both spoke very highly of Mr. Zagrobski and feels like he's doing a really good job, has a lot of solid experience and knowledge in finances and investments, and is doing a great job and really support his reappointment. So I wanted to share that with the committee. And I didn't get any reservations from either person I spoke to. So I don't know if you'd like to come to the microphone and say a little bit about your experience on the committee and why you're interested in continuing, if you don't mind, and then we can have a little discussion and.
Would you like me to come?
So it's the microphone up here. It's not for us, it's for the people at home. It won't sound like it's working, but it does. So, thank you.
Hello?
Yeah.
Working?
Yeah. And
All
if
right,
you don't mind,
well-
just, you have to introduce yourself for the record.
Yes, Walter Zagrobski, 4 Pillow Lace Lane, Ipswich. Thank you. I'm a current FEFI. I guess my term has recently expired last August, so I'm most interested in staying on for another 3-year term. I think it's the FEFI's have had a lot of great mystique ever since I moved to town in 1976. So I think things are on a really good track now since the sale of the property, since Little Neck, and we have an investment portfolio that's been doing quite well, much better the last year than previous couple of years, but we know the vagaries of the market. So yes, I had 51 years of investment and trust experience in Boston with a few firms, and still passionate about the markets, and think that my input and my experience working with investment advisors and working on trust accounts and court language and so forth puts me in good stead to continue to be an important part of this FEFI committee. So I highly appreciate the opportunity to serve the town, and in this capacity where I feel I have some really something to add and some expertise.
Thank you.
That's it.
Do you have any questions for? Sure. Yeah.
So I don't have any questions for you. Actually.
Okay.
I just had a thought for you.
Yeah.
For the appointments, do we have anything created that, that we have to advertise the opening to get other people that might be interested? Or is that only certain appointments that we do that?
I am not totally sure.
Or am I?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like in this situation, we have someone who is, I don't know, I don't think we have any responsibility that we have to advertise it. 'Cause it's not, it's a volunteer position.
Right.
But, if we know it's an opening where we don't have someone who is doing it and interested,
Right.
then we might
Right.
open it up.
Just given
We
the,
always have the opportunity to advertise it, but.
right. Oh, okay. All right. I was going to say, given the, gravity of some of the appointments that we've done, I don't know if it would be helpful, and maybe we don't have to, but to make sure we have, certain, a couple people, or whom, if it's just one person, not to say that I'm not going to vote for you. But I just, just to have the different perspectives, different people coming in and offering their perspective or, their desire to do it. If it was just they're appointed by us, but it would be great to have, to announce it to the public, so if anybody else is interested, come and talk to us, and then we can sort of,
So in this particular case, where the school committee only has the authority to appoint 2 people, there's a much larger number of FEFIs who are appointed by the select board, FinCom,
It's 222. So it's
222,
equal.
okay,
Yeah.
so 6. I don't know that we can set our own rules. I think it's up to the FEFIs to decide if they want to advertise it or not.
even though it's
I
our
think it's-
appointment?
Our appointment.
Because then, if they want the same person, then I can see where they wouldn't want to advertise, but if we're going to be the one sort of responsible
yeah, yeah.
for appointing them.
Yeah, yeah. It's something to think about going forward, for sure. In this situation, I think it's a pretty specialized role, and we want someone with really specific experience, which doesn't mean we couldn't find someone else down the road. And you know, and we will have to because there's term limits, so,
Yeah.
yeah. But it's certainly something we can think about going forward when we look at sort of all of our appointments that we're responsible for.
That's sort of where I was going, is that I think that the term limits, how they're appointed, 222, all that comes from the FEFI's bylaws, right? And so I would look to that for the guidance around whether we have to advertise or not.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Because again, they would want it to be consistent, that, you know,
Right.
one party wasn't always advertising while the other two groups weren't. You know, we're usually, for something like this, it's a specialized skill set. So,
Something to think about
Yeah, yeah,
for the
definitely.
future.
I do think that it does make sense. I think there are a lot of appointments that we've sort of lost track of as far as when they come up. So that might be, it's more of an administrative goal, unfortunately, but trying to just find what's the list of positions that as the school committee has to appoint and who's serving those, where are their vacancies, and when do they turn over.
Yeah. Sounds like a
Because it
school.
does seem a little bit inconsistent that we're spreading the word about openings in some positions, but not all. So that might just be something we want to get our arms around.
It's like a school committee goal for next year. An easy one that we could easily do. Okay, so let's get back to the reappointment at hand. Do we have other questions or comments about Mr. Zagrabski, or I will hear a motion?
Motion to reappoint Walter Zabrowski to the FEFI's committee for a 3-year term, beginning September 1?
I think I would say yes.
Beginning September 1, 2023.
Second.
All right, motion by Jeff, second by Jen. Any further discussion? All in favor? All right, 6-0. Thank you very much, and thank you for your work on this committee. It's very valuable. We appreciate it. All right, so at this point, we are going to switch over to open our public hearing on our FY25 school budget. I don't know if I give my little spiel first, or just, maybe I'll just open the hearing first. So I guess I will entertain a motion to open this public budget hearing on the FY25 budget.
So moved.
7:27 PM. Get a second?
Second?
Moved by Diana, second by Sasha. All in favor? 6-0. All right, so our public budget hearing is open on the FY25 budget. So just a little recap, we had budget presentations from the administrators last week over the course of 2 nights. I think we had some really good discussions and questions, and we will continue that later tonight at an agenda item a little bit later. And just to review the procedure a little bit of a budget hearing, this is kind of like an extended public comment. So open to the public to ask questions about the budget, clarifications. It's a chance for the public to weigh in on the budget, and a little bit about the procedure of our timeline. We have posted the budget in entirety on the school website a week ago, so it is available in its entirety to the public. It's a draft budget at this point because we have not voted on it. And over the course of this month, we'll continue to review the budget, provide any recommendations back to the superintendent and finance director, and then on February 29th, we will vote on the budget, and at that point, it will go from the superintendent's budget to the school committee budget. Then we present to the finance committee in early March, and then proceed to present at town meeting for voter approval. So that's sort of the timeline. So that said, do we have any comments from the public on the FY25 budget tonight for the budget hearing? All right, so I think the plan will just keep the budget hearing open. So we have a 30-minute sort of time slot for that. So we'll keep the budget hearing open, and we will not sit here and stare at the wall for 30 minutes. So we will keep moving on, and then we'll sort of check back in after a couple agenda items and make sure we, if any public members come and want to talk about the budget, we will get to them at that point. Okay. So now we are moving on to a little bit ahead of schedule, the overnight field trip request for Model UN. It seems like, is everybody here that you all need for your presentation? Okay, all right, so I will call you up and remind. So we have some members from the Model UN Club from the high school here, and you have in your folders tonight a copy of the overnight field trip request. And I will turn it over to you guys.
All right, thank you.
You just have to kind of, as you speak, maybe introduce yourselves.
Okay. So good evening, Madam Chair and School Committee. My name is Charlotte Donahue. I'm the president of the Model UN Club at Ipswich High School, and my fellow officers will introduce themselves.
I'm Amelia Morad. I'm the vice president.
I'm Mary Hannah Gallagher. I'm the secretary.
And I'm Charlie Quimby, I'm the treasurer. Our advisor is Mr. Caulfield.
Hi, Brennan Caulfield, advisor, first-year advisor.
We're really grateful for Mr. Caulfield to step up and help us this year. It's his first time, and we're all learning a lot alongside each other. So we are here to request an overnight field trip to take place Friday, March 22nd to Sunday, March 24th at the Eagle Model UN conference hosted by Boston College. We have 60 kids attending this year, an increase from last year where we had 40. So according to the rule, the ratio is 1 to 10, so we need 6 chaperones to come along with us. Right now, we have 3 teachers, including Mr. Caulfield, joining us, and we are opening it up to parents as well.
So during the conference, we stay at the Westin Coffee Place Hotel right in the city, which is super nice. And kids get to experience some of the city and be independent during the conference, because the conference is held in the hotel, and we stay in the rooms in the hotel. Along with independence comes safety. So Boston College has a lot of rules for curfew and boundaries and attendance, which takes a lot of the burden off the chaperones because they have like their own rules that we have to follow instead of us having rules and having chaperones everywhere around the hotel. Most of the students actually don't even need to go outside because it's connected to the Prudential. So a lot of like the food and stuff, we have to get our own lunch. And most of the nights we have to get our own dinner. And so kids are pretty self-reliant on that. They can just walk down the street.
So what is Model UN? It's an enriching club that deals with topics of peace and security, human rights, development, and rule of law and issues. The students actively participate in civil debate, create arguments, and compromise with others in committees. Last year at Eagle Monk, we walked away with 3 students winning awards out of 800 student participants.
So every year we do 2 conferences usually. Our first one at Georgetown earlier this year involved all the kids from Ipswich, so a little over 60, and all of Georgetown's Model UN kids, and Ipswich did very, very well. We won most of the awards, including Best Delegate and Best Chair, and it was a good showing, so we're hoping to continue that effort into Boston.
Right, and we all enjoy Model UN because of the diverse issues that you encounter, and we would like to share our personal experiences on our committees last year. So Charlie and I participated in the NCAA Board of Directors at Eagle Monk and dealt with NIL deals and gender equality in college sports. My role was Sabrina Ionescu, a former collegiate women's basketball player and current WNBA player, and I fought for gender equality specifically in the NCAA March Madness tournament and worked on a resolution to create better television contracts and strategies to bring in more revenue for women's basketball.
Like Charlotte said, I was on the NCAA Sports Committee, and it was a smaller committee, and the nice thing about Eagle Monk is you can choose what level of attention and how large you want your committee to be. There's small ones of 6 kids to large ones of up to 50. So it's a really diverse group, and it really teaches you how to debate and interact with your fellow students.
I was on the Japanese Reconstruction Agency last year, and I was the owner of a construction company, so it was really interesting because we had to figure out how to rebuild Japan after a nuclear disaster from a tsunami in Japan. So there were a lot of different crises. I was asking my chemistry teacher about like all the different things we could do with like the nuclear things because it was super interesting. And I was lucky enough to be on a crisis committee, so we just like kept having issues come up. Like we made hydraulic electricity with dams, and then the dams broke, so then we had to find something else, and then we had to find housing. So it was just like different things that come up. And sometimes some of the crisis committees have like midnight crises. So now they'll tell you. They used to just make you go downstairs in your pajamas, but now they'll be like, okay, we have a crisis at midnight, come down here, we're gonna have a problem that we need to all solve. So it gets pretty interesting.
I was a part of a crisis committee, sorry, I forgot my glasses, I can't read this, but dealing with the politics of Guatemala in the mid-20th century. There were many experiences when I, acting as the former president of Guatemala, had to regain control over a dividing nation between the Communist Soviet Union sympathizers, Banana Republic businesses, and the inner workings of the United States in my falling government. I was taken hostage by the Soviets and worked as a delegate for my committee to finalize and agree on a treaty between the United States, the Soviet Union, communist rebels, and Guatemala to maintain prosperity in Guatemala. My role in this committee won me the Best Delegate gavel last year, and it got me into college because I wrote the supplemental essay of the college I'm going to for that.
Thanks.
All right, that's all, thank you.
Thank you. You guys answered all my questions. I had questions about safety and how, are there rules about, because I know it's all grades, so I'm not so much worried about you guys, because I know you're juniors and seniors, but, freshmen, I'm assuming you can't just wander all over the city, and so you said that there were sort of parameters, you can go to the mall, or you can go to this one street, so that's good to hear. And I had a question about the chaperones. I was curious if any of you have ever done the midnight crisis, because that sounds fun. And then I just had a question about payment, so I think you answered that for me over email, Charlotte, but.
So each student pays, it was a $90 deposit and then $210 for the call.
Yeah.
The $90 is for Eagle Monk, the Boston College running it, and then $210 is for the hotel rooms.
Okay. Yeah. So it's not school department funded, it's parent funded, and they provide assistance for students who might need it. And what else?
So is everyone going that wants to go, I guess is the.
Yes.
We were a little worried about having room for everybody because last year we only had 40 members going, and we had a big jump to 60 members going this year. So luckily, Mr. Caulfield worked with Boston College to make that work for everybody.
And the only kids who aren't allowed to go are the kids who didn't go to our first conference in Georgetown. That's kind of like with the training wheels, you understand the platform. So if a student didn't go to that one, they wouldn't be eligible to go to Boston College. But we make exceptions for music or sports. And
Yeah, and it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday, right? So it's missing half of the day on
it's on
Friday?
the agenda. We leave school at 3:30. We get there at 3:30.
No.
We get there at 3:30? Sorry.
We get
11:30.
dismissed from school at 11:30.
Okay.
And then we arrive in Boston at approximately 12:30. And then we go to Faneuil Hall, we get lunch. And in the past, Mr. Krieger has given us like a walking tour through Boston where we go visit like Samuel Adams' grave, walk through Boston Garden. I'm sure we'll probably have the same route this year, but.
You guys will have to lead it, though, instead.
I'll get notes from Jen.
I also wanted to point out that 3 school committee members have, I believe, students attending this conference, but because it's not a school-funded initiative, we are comfortable to vote on it, so it's not a conflict, so I just wanted to say that out loud. Any other questions for our students?
I'm just curious, bus transportation, there's school buses?
Yes, we're gonna leave at 11:30, and part of the fee, the $210, the bus transportation was rolled into that. I do have to touch base with Jeff, and I think it's just one bus. Last year, you guys have one bus? Wait, two buses? Okay, two
Because we
buses.
take our luggage on the school buses.
Gotcha. Yeah, that
I'm
makes sense.
almost sure this year we will need 3 buses for the increase of students.
With the, okay. With the extra luggage, okay.
So circle back with me next week.
Okay.
just
About availability?
Because with the school bus, with them being school buses, I want to make sure that everything is square with Salter Transportation for 3 buses, because
Yeah.
we don't want any last-minute headaches with
Yeah.
transporting everyone down there.
Other questions? And just, this is a field trip we've been on for 9 years? I think it's, yeah, so it's a, yeah. So this is not a new field trip. Other questions?
No.
Anyone like to make a motion?
I move to approve the overnight field trip request for Model UN.
Second?
Moved by Diana, second by Jenny. Any further discussion? All in favor? All right, 6-0. You're approved. Thank you very much. Thanks. Nice presentation, and have a good time.
Good job. Ask again, and we'll just keep it open till 8 o'clock or so.
All right. So next on our agenda is the FY25 school budget discussion, but before that, I just want to restate that the public budget hearing is open. If anyone has questions or comments on the budget, you're welcome to come up. Okay. And if not, we will start our discussion of the FY25 budget. As I said, we had 2 detailed presentations last week with good discussions and questions. I have some more questions about the district-wide budget and building operations budgets in particular. So tonight is our chance to ask questions, get clarifications, ask for more details, and it's probably a good idea for us to start thinking about what we will need for our FinCom presentations next month. So I don't know if people do people have specific questions, or I can start with mine. Do people have questions? We'll open it up.
Well, I don't have a specific question, but I need a little bit, more than a little bit of clarification on exactly how the override calculator works. And so specifically, and I'm happy to wait until later in our conversation, I'm interested in the assumptions that we're using, and it's the 3.9% annual budget growth. And I did watch Thursday night's meeting, which I didn't see. And Tom, you gave an explanation, it's in your memo here, that we're using those assumptions because that's how the calculator was built, and we're holding those. And I'm just wondering, is 3.9% an accurate assumption based on the rate of growth that we've seen over the past 2, 3, 5-year budget? I need some clarification on that. And then specifically, where we're taking out, I think it's 500,000 in choice and a little over 200,000 in special ed stabilization. The assumption now says, assuming our special ed spending doesn't decrease by 200,000, we're going to be relying on those rotating funds every year in order to sustain that same 3.9%. So I don't know if we want to open with that. I know that that's sort of a bigger question, but I need some help getting my arms around that.
We sort of ended with that. I had some follow-up on that too we want to start there. Otherwise, I'm good with starting with questions.
Sure. That's a terrific question. I think the nature of the question around the assumptions, I think that you're spot on. These assumptions that the town available revenue will grow by 3.2% each year is an underestimate given the last number of years. And I also think it's more than fair to say that the school district budget growing by 3.9% is also, an underestimate. I don't necessarily feel it was my place to change those numbers without a conversation among the group. When putting together the material for last Thursday night's conversation, or presentation, I guess, and the material that I handed out and walked through, I did mention that both of those assumptions, I think, deserve to be revisited. I think a more realistic, number, as we discussed as a group last Thursday, at least for the moving forward, the operating budget each year, operating growth each year, something closer to in the 4%, 4.5% to 5% range is probably both more realistic and certainly more representative of the last, handful of years. So I think I just didn't feel it was my place to change those assumptions just without a conversation with the group and doing it, openly in that way. I think it also may be reasonable to get input from the town in making those assumptions. This isn't just our document, it's certainly a guiding document, but I don't think it's the end-all to the planning that the school committee needs for the best resources needed for the operation of the schools. Having the document I pushed out earlier tonight as the Excel doc, which was the hard copy of this, meaning the hard copy from last week, I think there's an opportunity there for us as a group, or even individually, to sort of plug and play a little bit about what we think some assumptions might be. Now to your other two questions about beginning to use a couple of the revolving funds. Let's sort of take maybe the easier one first, right? The circuit breaker. I think circuit breaker, unless the legislature changes something dramatically, we can always rely on a reasonable balance in circuit breaker, right? If we've seen, which I'm sure is some other questions, at least some that Kate had shared earlier today, around the growing cost of out-of-district tuitions, growing costs of special education transportation. Both of those things aren't within our control. So I think the state and the legislatures certainly recognizes that. So I think the ability for us and every school district, excuse me, to continue to get some circuit breaker reimbursements each year and be able to use that funding into the future, I think is going to be reliable, and it's going to be more and more necessary. Each year we have used some circuit breaker money. We haven't tapped it to the recommended number this year at the 50% rate. But I also think that having 50% available can help us with those unanticipated expenses in the course of any given year too. So I think that's almost the easy one. That's a very reliable source moving forward, unless unless the economy tanks and the legislature changes. Excuse me, I apologize. It changes lots of things, which isn't really foreseeable. The other question regarding this is the special education, the stabilization fund. That's something that the school district hasn't requested access to in some time. That is something that I think historically and as a matter of legislative intent, meaning the town's legislative intent, that's why the fund was created, for this purpose, to support the school district in extraordinary special education means. If such a fund really didn't exist, then it would be imposed upon the school committee to effectively drain funding from other sources, whether it's regular education or even personnel, to cover those costs, special education costs that are required by law. So I think to begin to use the special education, stabilization fund is why it's there. Certainly, it requires town meeting approval to do so each year, which is appropriate, I think. But I feel that if we continue to have, growing costs, then being able to access special education funds that are resources and are both legitimate sources is probably the cost of doing business in the future. I see both of those things as necessary and reliable moving forward. I don't know if that's...
I guess the third one is just choice.
So, school choice, yeah, thank you. So, school choice, I think, is going to be a policy decision, year to year. I think as we will see, it'll take us a few years to fully understand or see what school choice, enrollment I may bring. Are we able to enroll the same, say, number of students in the elementary grades that we're graduating at grade 12? And what sort of balance, may that be? Time will tell. This is the second year in a row that the administration and with the school committee's obviously endorsement has not opened up school choice at the secondary level. So it's really hard to make any reliable prediction there. But I think with the predicted, end of year balance, meaning end of fiscal '24's balance being about $1.7 million, if we were to a net out, which part of the exercise that I did to prepare this recommendation, we'd be realizing about $1.4 million to $1.5 million in the balance, sort of, at the end of the following year, right? Which is still fairly healthy, but if school choice enrollment continue or goes down, if we outpace graduating than enrolling new youngsters, that's going to be an annual conversation that may get more difficult. So that's a policy decision. It's not as straightforward as the other two funds are.
And the calculator assumes that we will take the similar amount, 500,000, out of choice next year to fund the operating budget, or somewhere else. We'd have to
You mean
find-
in fiscal '26 when you're referring to next year?
Yes.
The calculator makes no assumptions about school choice. The calculator makes only the assumption with regard to the school stabilization fund, not the special education stabilization fund.
I'm just saying, to assume 3.9% growth, or whatever number we want to use there,
Yeah.
is going to only be with the appropriate budget that we asked town meeting for approval this year, not funding from outside sources.
Correct. Yeah. Because if we were to take, if we were to include the cost of total expenses for operating the school district, which is the appropriated budget sort of as a base, right? And then on top of that would be, supplemental funding through grants and other resources. And then certainly, stabilization funds there. That certainly well exceeds, 3.9%. But if we keep the appropriated cost, meaning the cost that we're asking the taxpayer to bear, somewhere between 3.9 and 5 is going to be much more realistic, even closer to 5 or above, like we're recommending this year.
Thanks for the clarification.
What we discussed at the end of last meeting was to update, Jeff, to your question, the assumptions that are going in about the increase in revenue and the budget. There's just been wild variations over the last few years with pandemic days, certainly made sense. And so we all have the calculator now. If we use the current year numbers, which is an increase in town revenue of 4.1%, and an increase in budget of 5.8%, it puts us to within 170,000 of making sure that the override lasts the full 5 years. That 170,000 is about 0.4% of our annual budget, and so it's hard because we got lots of variables this year. I think we'll be in a better position next year to track that, but that's also something that's certainly within our means to pull from revolving funds, just to close that gap. It's not small, but we certainly could do it to ensure that the override lasted a full 5 years. I think that's an important piece if we use those as assumptions going in. And there's just been so much variability in the past. I think I would recommend the best thing for us to do is use this year's numbers in those go-forward projections for the next 3 years. And we can adjust next year and know better.
Yeah, I would certainly endorse that, because some of the calculations that we've done back at the office are exactly based on that, using the fiscal figures given to us by the town a couple weeks ago now. I think is more than a reasonable starting point. And I think it also then using the higher numbers, using the fiscal 25 numbers that the town's provided, still allow us, as you said, but I think couldn't be a more important point, still allow us to meet the 5-year expectation with a little balance for the future.
Very, very close, yeah.
And of course, if I may, the other variable, which also makes, it's part of the FY25 budget, assumes a recommendation that we are bringing forward a $900,000 contribution from closing fiscal '24, but makes no assumption in '25 or beyond anything above the calculator's $300,000 that's sort of baked in. I think if we start planning now for even, a higher amount, if appropriate, then we may be able to even get into year 6. Maybe not at the same, dollar values, but certainly having something to contribute to a future year, I think brings a lot more credibility to the committee's, fiscal management of this, and our attentiveness to the town's expectation.
My questions are probably easier. So, hopefully. A lot of it's just sort of like clarifications on stuff to make sure I'm understanding things correctly. So in the building operations budget, I didn't write what page it's on. It's on page 75. So just in the middle, it's the bottom of page 75. So middle school, high school, building and grounds maintenance, I see 7.5 FTEs, and that hasn't changed, so I'm not concerned about the dollar amount. I'm just curious, what are those? I mean, I assume that's the custodial staff, but is there more than that?
No, just
That's all
custodial staff.
custodial
Yep.
stuff. Okay, I didn't know we had that many. Okay. Thank you. Told you it'd be easy.
That was an easy one.
Starting easy. I'll get more. I'll try to
I wasn't
ramp it up
needing a
little
challenge,
bit.
I was just...
Okay, and then it's the building operations and the district-wide budget. I hadn't really had as much time to go through in detail, so. In central office, on page 80, or maybe not page 80, there's in the undistributed, it's not page 80, sorry. There's like an undistributed bucket at the beginning. And there's a line about professional development purchased services. That goes down quite substantially. It's line 2358, 6380. So it goes down from 60,000 to 6,000.
Yes.
And I don't understand that one.
So that is also, so in opening fiscal '24, so if you see, the column that says fiscal '24,
Yeah.
the budget that the committee approved and ultimately was presented last January or thereabouts, and then made its way through town meeting. In all candor, that was a typo. It was intended to be a $6,000 budget. And so that resource, as you see, has been corrected. And it was, so we had corrected it when we opened the budget in July. And that additional, that 54,000 was
Wrong money.
was frankly an error from over a year ago.
Okay.
So that was sort of an inflated figure that Dr. Wagner would love to have. She's joked with us a couple times, but her request for '24 and again for '25 was the $6,000, which is effectively level funding.
That makes sense. And I'm an editor, so it's
Yes.
not odd that I picked up a
Yeah,
typo.
no,
Okay.
that's fairly glowing, yeah, I mean glaring right there on the page, yeah.
Okay. And I guess there's a part of the IT budget
Yep,
I'm not totally understanding either,
okay.
which is on the same page. So the lines that end 6816 and 6821, I guess I'm just, no, I need my, so, let's see, 616. So I guess there's money, 275,000 basically for tech computers. And then there's also money from capital funds for that. So is that line item, essentially, we're spending, the 275 from the appropriated budget plus the 155 from capital funds?
Yes.
Okay. So that's a really big ticket line item. I mean, I know IT.
It is, and
And then
it's-
that's the same year to year, essentially?
It's fairly consistent. The capital funds, it's about at least looking backwards as well as what we have moving forward, is about a $150,000 expense item per year.
Okay.
The next couple of years, meaning next year and the year after, '25 and '26. So fiscal '25, it's that number, it's 154,000. So it's fairly consistent for fiscal '25. But in fiscal year '26, it bumps up, almost doubles, it's to 292,000. And that is the rotation cycle for the replacement of the switches and AP devices is a district-wide expectation. So there is a technology plan that rotates, equipment and technology based on the expected life of the device and the expected, necessary, turnover
Okay.
for the efficiency of devices and so forth. And both the capital budget and the appropriated budget sort of work together to fund.
And we've always done that, like partially, okay.
Yeah.
So are those kind of like balloon years that, because it's the time's up in the cycle to replenish things, and then maybe it'll
In
be
fiscal
lower
'26,
for-
it will be. It's a known balloon year because it's a district-wide replacement of some pretty sophisticated technology, meaning all the switches, all the internet switches and internet-related devices.
Okay. Sorry, I don't mean to dominate all the questions.
Keep going if you have more.
So the next page, special education. So line, let's see, 9,400, the collaborative tuitions. Also just a really large increase from FY '24 to FY '25, and an offset, as we discussed, from the Special Education Stabilization Fund. So I guess I know we don't have any control over that because we have to pay those, but that just seems like a really particularly large increase, and I didn't know if there was any more sort of.
So that is really student-driven
Yep.
and special education, program-driven. Really the largest driver, as we shared in one of the early slides, and in fact, it's on page 2 or 3 of the budget book. The original budget as presented by the administrative team that that was presented to us, and we obviously shared with the superintendent. The original budget, if we were, which we didn't present to you, but other than sharing it, was over 10.6%. The largest amount of that increase was really driven by extraordinary special education costs. We were able to, among lots of administrative measures, we were able to bring some of those costs down by, in this case, applying offsets to the Special Education Stabilization Fund, which hadn't been part of the original plan, as well as tapping circuit breaker for a higher amount, which also wasn't part of the original plan. So those special education costs that we're anticipating for out-of-district tuitions as well as transportation, they will still exist next year.
Right. Yep.
But they will be, the cost of the expending that cost will be shared by the appropriated budget and two of our revolving
Offsets,
funds.
yep, okay. So those 3 tuitions, those are just tuitions, they're not, because transportation's is separate.
Transportation's a special line, yes, a separate line, rather.
Okay. Let's see. And then I had a question on the performing arts line. There was a 1.0 FTE that went to a 0.6.
So it's really, it's more reflective of the hours for the position.
Okay.
It's not a 40-hour-a-week position.
Okay.
So I felt as we needed to make the FTE sort of match the work.
Okay. So it's not a
It's not a
reduction or
reduction.
anything?
It's
just
not a
more-
reduction in the position as we know it now. It's not a reduction in the work. We should probably be paying our performing arts director more for the work that he puts into this. But certainly, the change in FTE is reflective of, it's not a full-time position.
Okay. I mean, I noticed the dollar amount didn't change. I
Correct.
just
Yeah.
seemed odd that the FTE changed and the dollar amount didn't change, so I just wanted to check in on
Great pickup.
that. And then I guess my last question is just around, I had emailed you about, just could you explain our debt service in terms of sort of like what things do we have for debt service? Some are short-term, some are long-term.
That service folder.
Just so we have a sense of that. And, a lot of this is just for me to understand it when we're going to the FinCom, when we're going to town meeting. We
Just
sort
want
of
to talk about the wind
understand.
turbine again.
Would you like to?
Not really.
So, in the fiscal, in the budget, in the central office budget, under capital projects and bonds, there are 3 lines there. Short-term debt interest, long-term debt principal, and long-term debt interest. We had been for a handful of years now spending off the long-term debt and long-term debt interest. So I can speak to those 2 first, because the third one is a new addition this year. I work to stay in sync with the expectations of the town treasurer as well as the town finance director in this. So thank you for tipping it off, because I probably wouldn't have brought this handout without the tip-off, so I appreciate that. So there are a couple of funds, or projects rather, that continue to be funded. There are 4 right now that will continue to be funded under the second 2 lines, long-term principal and long-term debt. Into FY '25, there are some school renovations which were approved in fiscal year 2007. There were 2 pieces of that, so school renovation work. The wind turbine, as Jeff mentioned, approved in fiscal year 11, will be paying the wind turbine effectively through fiscal year 30. So we're going to be seeing that as as existing in these lines. The two school renovation projects from fiscal year 2007, one will drop off in fiscal '26, and the second will drop off in fiscal '27. Those numbers, of course, are going down. The last piece that exists on this is the turf field from fiscal year '16, and we'll be paying the turf field debt through fiscal year '31, and that's that one's $65,000 a year. So if we were to add all of these figures together from the four projects that I just listed, the turf field is $65,000, the wind turbine is $72,000, and the school renovation is about $36,000. So those four projects equal, the $173,000 and the $36,000 for the long-term debt and the long-term principal. Short-term debt, which is the first line in the capital project work, is our now need, or the town's now need to fund for the first time, the new school roofs that were approved at the town meeting last year. And I brought my town meeting warrant book, from last year, which I probably also wouldn't have brought if you didn't tip me off. So thank you, Kate, for.
Thank you, or I'm sorry. I'm not
No,
sure.
don't be sorry. It's all good. It's all good.
Trying to prepare you for FinCom.
No, that's, no, I like it. So, so Article 18 and 19 of last spring's town meeting were the two warrant articles that approved the two roofs. The middle high school roof had a $420,000 price tag, and the two elementary school roofs together were about $1.5 million. So those were the dollar amounts that were approved. Town meeting gave the discretion to the town to do, one of two things to raise those dollars. They could have either appropriated the sum from the tax base, or they could have gone to the bond market to issue bond and issue debt. The town chose to issue debt. That was in its interest at the time, or how it felt it best able to afford that work. So we now are required to, and the town is asking us to obviously fund through the school budget the debt service, which will be short-term debt service, because the overall bond between all three buildings, if you will, was what, $1.9 million, thereabouts. So it's not a 30-year loan. It's not a 30-year debt. So that's in fiscal fiscal 25 is the $70,646, which is the first time, but not the last time that will appear.
Thank you.
And these figures, I can tell you that gets us to the 70,000. It's 15,000 for the roof here on this building, middle high school, and 55,500 for the two elementary school roofs. So those numbers combined get us to the 70,000.
Other questions on the budget or more information we need?
I'd like just a little more clarification on the budget, the override calculator too. Can you explain line 4 and line 7? Like, I know one's actual and one's projected, but how we get those numbers?
Line for, my computer just fell asleep, so I just woke it back up. Sorry about that. Line 4?
And 7, they're like the same thing, but one's actual and one's projected.
Yeah, so line 4 was the annual contribution to the stabilization fund as the actual amount contributed from the closing of one school year. So in fiscal year '23, we were able to contribute $2.7 million from the closing of the fiscal '23 budget. And the prior year, I wasn't here, but we contributed $1.3 million. So those are actual figures that get put on in that row. Line 7 is the projected number. And, you know, each year, if we were to contribute the actual 900,000, then using this format, we would then move 900,000 up to row 4 moving forward.
Okay, so for the actuals, those are kind of the balance at the end of the year, so we. Okay.
I apologize. No,
Okay, so,
not.
yeah, that's
So the balance at the end of the year is going to be row 8.
Row
Row
4 is,
4 represents what we are able to sort of cobble together, if you will, from available balances, both planned and maybe unplanned, are what we think is affordable to be able to use from one year to help fund future years.
that's what we contributed to stabilization at the end of those fiscal years at town meeting.
At town meeting, right. And town meeting has to approve money going in.
So we just posited 1.33 at the end of FY '22 into stabilization, and we transferred 2.7 at the end of FY '23, which were, you know, are pretty high because we had ESSER funding.
funding
It was a large part of it. So those probably aren't sustainable contributions going forward, which is why when you get to the projected numbers, they're much more
Diana,
conservative.
is your question, why were we able to afford such high numbers? I don't want
Yeah,
to put
yeah.
words in your mouth, but
Yes, yeah, and then they obviously significantly change for projected, which I know is just projected, but.
So I don't want to sound silly and all of a sudden I'll be grateful for the pandemic, but, because that would be absurd. But the availability of pandemic-related dollars, both state and federal dollars that were infused into school districts and municipalities, really allowed the support of the district to run, you know, off those federal funds for that period of time. And so we weren't expending the taxpayer dollar, the local taxpayer dollar, at the same rate because those federal funds were infused. Granted, they were temporary. Everyone knew that they would have a life of between 3 and 4 years, depending on which fund they were. So I think that's another reason why we won't be contributing those types of dollars probably really ever again. It also allowed us, if you see line 3, it also allowed us for fiscal year '24, this year, allowed us to withdraw from the stabilization fund a significantly lower amount, right? To balance the fiscal '24 budget, we only needed to access $962,000, whereas the prior couple of years it was 1.8 million, then 1.3 million. So I would also foresee that as the availability of these outside dollars, meaning the federal dollars, declines, we're going to be contributing less from the closing of one fiscal year, and we're going to be needing more if we keep at this pace, which I think is realistic, but it needs to be shared transparently.
That number also grew because of the override in 2022.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, yeah, so FY
was the
'23
next-
was the beginning of an override, a recently passed override, so that's kind of the mechanism that we have set up for overrides, is in the early years, we have more funds to be able to put into stabilization, and then as we get to the tail ends of the override, we're pulling more, so.
The other factor, too, is the ebb and flow of positions and just the fiscal outlook for the district. If we have a mild winter, for example, we end up spending less in fuel oil that we had budgeted, so there's a surplus there. If we have changes in student placements, there may be a potential savings there. If we have, we budget based on our current staff. If we end up having staff turnover, we have retirements, or people leave the district, and then when we backfill those positions at lower salaries, there's savings. So, you know, we may not spend all the money in a repair line that we had anticipated needing to spend. So at the end of the year, what ends up happening is we cobble together, literally, all of the unspent funds, and that goes into the stabilization fund for the next year.
Yeah, okay, that was, when I said balance, that's what I meant, like our end of the year close number. Okay, but that, I was like, why are they so high? But that makes sense.
Could I just speak to that, because I think you're on an incredibly important point. If we look at row 6 and row 8, so row 6 is the year-end actual stabilization balance after the shortfall is deducted, meaning after row 3 comes out, right? The reason why we wouldn't put the 900,000 or anything above that is so we want to be able to transparently show what the balance actually is going to be without any contribution. So right now in fiscal '24, if we were to go, rows 1 through 6, that's anticipating we're putting, nothing out of fiscal '24's budget, right? There's a 0 there or a blank line in row 4. And I think that's important to know. If someone were to say we don't put anything, say the school committee says, we don't want to put anything in it, what's that going to look like? Well, that's then the projected balance for the stabilization fund closing out fiscal '24 would be row 6 would be 3.9 million. So row 7 then exists as a projection, right, a plan. So prior to my literally typing in 900,000, that said 300,000. And then row 8 is what would the projected balance be if we put in whatever amount row 7 suggests. So that's kind of why there's a difference between row 4 as an actual contribution and row 7 as a projected or a planned contribution. So if we are able to put in 900,000 as we close out fiscal '24, the balance in the stabilization fund will be 4.8 million. Thereby allowing us to carry that money into, and we would take out of that, according to this plan, $1,496,996 to fund the fiscal '25 budget.
Yeah, it's like, I get it, it's like kind of confusing how it like goes in and comes out, right?
It does. And I tried to make it clear. I added a couple categories and tried to add some clarity. And hopefully that's.
Yeah, no,
think
that
it's
helps, it's just for me.
much more clear than it used to be, personally. It has a little more detail. I mean, I think at some point it got a little oversimplified, personally. But I think this, to me, lays it out.
Yeah, I would agree with that analysis, because I'm not new to the spreadsheet world, but when I first looked at it when I got here, I'm like, oh, I don't understand this at all. Just to be honest with you. Like,
Well,
I
the
need
other-
that.
the
I
other
need,
Pieces that over the years, there had been multiple versions of the calculator out there that
yeah.
people were looking at different versions, and now this is it.
I have like 2 more questions. I'm wondering how much, in each school's budget, they have projected enrollments. Like, how much does a difference of 15 students, say, impact the line items?
That's a wide open question, tough to answer. It depends on the grade level. Are those 15 students all in one grade? What are the needs of those students? I'm not sure.
So what I'm getting at, and this happened last year too, 3 schools kind of make similar assumptions. They carry the number from, one grade into the next grade for the next year. One school adds anywhere from 2 to 6 students. So if you use the same method that the other schools use, you'd have 15 students less than what that one school projects. So I'm wondering, do we need that much of a buffer?
You talking a financial buffer or a student enrollment count?
Financial, like how much is that? Is it insignificant, or is it like, oh, we might not need to account for 15 potential extra
So
students.
I think to Dr. Blake's point, it really depends on where those students are. If, 15 students are going to be third graders, that's potentially another classroom. But if 15 students are across K through, 4, K through 5, that's really insignificant.
Okay, that's what it is. It's
Certainly for supplies and materials, 15 students across the school is insignificant.
Okay.
But if it's we're adding 15 third graders, well, then the conversation's going to be, we're going to need another room, we're going to need another teacher, we're certainly going to need to do, additional staffing.
Okay,
It really depends.
okay. But across the school,
Across the school would be fairly insignificant, yes,
okay.
to the cost of supplies and materials.
To me, I feel like those projections are to give us not a worst-case scenario, but a potential scenario of increasing, a few increased students at each grade, and how that would play out for class sizes in those grades. Just sort of think about if that happened, would we still be good with 3 sections or 4 sections? To me, it's like an exercise of looking how that would play out in terms of class sizes.
Yeah, I get, it's just, it's inconsistent how each
Yeah, how
school
the schools
does
do it.
it. So I feel like maybe in the future, all schools assume a certain percent change, or they just carry over each year. Because it's interesting that one school does it a little different, but I guess it's good that it's not having a big impact on the budget.
Well, I think in a more perfect world, our ability to budget supplies and materials based on enrollment counts would certainly have a per student, allocation. We're not in that. We don't have the ability to do that. We couldn't really afford that. If we were to say every student we're going to spend $80 on supplies and materials, I'm making that up, right? But if we were to go down a different sort of planning approach toward supplies and materials, for example, then I think something like that would be a very useful exercise. But I don't think we can actually afford that. I think if you look at the last number of years, and probably lots of school districts, not just ours, you would see not a huge jump in supplies and materials other than maybe a curriculum buy, right? If we're turning over curriculum, or we're turning over some resource material that is, its useful life is at its end, then they're going to see a jump. But by and large, supplies and materials, classroom materials, general education materials are going to be fairly consistent, almost regardless of enrollment. And that's not the best either. But
Okay, all right. My last question, I'm going to go there. The world language position, theoretically, could the administration write a Payne grant for that position? And if the committee approved it, then that could be funded through a different source than the appropriated
Theoretically,
budget.
yes.
Okay,
However,
wonderful.
that
We've already done that.
Yeah.
was a Payne grant that was rolled into a position. Backwards and doing it again.
But it's still enhancement. I mean, I don't have the
That's why it was a
rubric.
theoretical question.
Yeah,
The difficulty is that we've had the position open for months now and have not been able to hire.
I mean the one that's approved. There's a,
We have someone in-house.
right.
Right.
But could that be taken out of this budget and potentially, if the Payne Grant Committee approved it, be taken out of this budget and funded through a Payne grant?
Oh, that question. That I'm not sure of. And I say that because the provisions, one of the current provisions in an intent of the FEFIs is to supplement, not supplant, the district appropriated budget. So that would be a significant change if, especially now that we're talking about it openly, that we want to cut the appropriated budget and start using Payne grant monies to support something that was in the budget. very dangerous territory, because the next thing will be buying heating oil and paying electric bills with it, too.
Oh, no, I mean, enhancement is not heating oil, but I'm just saying like, I think it sounds like we're good with the the 5-year projection, but, if we need to be creative to make sure, like, I think we should be looking at every line item, so.
I think there would be significant pushback if we cut the position out of a proposed budget to knowing full well that, first of all, somebody would essentially be losing their job. We would be riffing somebody, technically, and then having to rehire them after a paying grant was approved. And the paying grant would be for a year, and then what? Who's going to stay knowing that it's only for a year? And we've just cut it out of an appropriated budget. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
And I think it sets a
Mechanics
tough
of it.
precedent
Yeah.
to do it again.
Historically, the positions we funded through paying grants have been new programs, like that we're piloting or trying, or, like computer science. And I think world language was originally in that department in the elementary level. So it may be possible, it does seem a little bit like a shift backwards from how we've done it, how we funded positions historically. And then if, like, to your point, eventually if it's going to have to get rolled, would have to get rolled back into the budget in a couple years, because things don't seem to, at least at this point, be able to be permanently funded by FEFI's funds, positions. But
Just throwing it out there. More to discuss at the FEFI subcommittee.
Yes, if you could help me explain, this is probably a basic question that everybody else probably knows the answer to, but why can't we use the money that we're going to be putting into the stabilization fund towards our budget? Instead of putting so much in there, can it, go into the budget that we're working on?
So that's a great question. The budget it is an annual appropriation that has a life of 12 months. So we have to be able to account for those dollars within a 12-month period. The taxpayers give us a budget regardless of the amount. They give us a $39 million budget. The expectation is that we're going to be funding educational needs over the course of 12 months. It's not a roll-forward budget. We don't get to, we have to go back and ask the taxpayers to give it to us again, which is why when we contributed the 2.7 million, we did that at town meeting.
Right.
Town meeting effectively accepted the 2.7 back, and they're holding it for us for future use. But we don't automatically get it. In theory, town meeting could say no. I mean, town meeting could vote down
Right.
our request for
Right.
For a supplemental appropriation through the stabilization fund.
Because I know there was talk about that last year with the roofs and things, and why couldn't?
That's a different question, but yes.
Oh,
Go ahead.
okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
No.
So the stabilization fund was not intended to support capital projects. And I think that was
Okay.
the biggest answer around the roofs.
Okay.
That is a capital expenditure that should not necessarily be borne really exclusively, especially at that dollar amount, by, the school budget. The school budget should be more teaching and learning and not necessarily really capital expenses of that kind. So the stabilization fund was intended to support operating needs, not capital, building, building needs.
Okay. Thank you.
And there are pretty strict parameters around the stabilization funds. They have to go, it has to be by town meeting to put money in or to take money out. So we can't shuffle money. Sort of, it has to go in
Right.
to ask for it to come out, which
Right.
sometimes seems like an extra step, but that's just
Right.
the way it is. And it's good. I mean, we shouldn't have open access
Oh,
to
right.
all that money.
Right.
Town meeting has control over that, so.
Right.
Because not again, but it originated as taxpayer funds, right? The taxpayers voted to support the override and had certain expectations of that use. So when we are fortunate to be able to access those funds, if we don't actually need them in the course of a year, it is only responsible to effectively give them back and then ask for them at a future time, which is a separate independent request.
Okay. Thank you.
Do we have any, do we want to have any discussion about information we need to gather for our FinCom presentations? We could do that at a subcommittee, finance
We could.
subcommittee level?
I think it
guess
might
the
be
next
more
time we meet
practical
is
at the
February
subcommittee level,
29th,
but
so-
whatever your pleasure. Yeah.
Because, I mean, I just know we have a pretty new committee, but, I know you, and at least you and I, and have a pretty good sense of things they commonly ask, so things we might need to
Yeah.
prepare that would be different than the administrators presenting to us. I think there's some other, they always want MCAS data and.
I'm going to send that to them separately.
Yeah, so, and there's other things. So yeah, maybe at a subcommittee level, we can have that discussion well in advance of those presentations.
That'd be great.
So other questions, or should we wrap up the discussion of this budget for tonight? Okay. So at this point, I think I would like to, again, offer to our two citizens here. Public hearing is still open on the budget. If anyone has questions, comments, I invite you to the microphone. And if seeing none, I will, I think it's time to entertain a motion to probably close the public budget hearing. It's been open for well past the 30 minutes. So could I get a motion for that, please?
Move to close the public budget hearing.
Second.
Very quiet motions to close the budget hearing. To close the budget hearing by Diane, a second by Jen. All in favor? Good. Thank you. So does that need to be roll call? Budget hearing, okay. So public budget hearing is now closed. We will move on to our next item on our agenda, which is next couple should be brief. Payne Grant Committee discussion. It's on our agenda for 40 minutes, but I think maybe I don't think we meant to talk that long about it, but as I stated at the beginning, we have a couple of openings. We had appointed a former school committee member, Emily Cannon, as community at large member a few months ago. She contacted us, and due to some scheduling changes in her work, she is unable to serve. So we, again, are looking for a community member at large and also a local business representative. So I just wanted to talk with the committee briefly about how to reach out to people for those openings. Those Payne Grant submissions are due at the end of March, so those meetings take place in April and May. And I know Jeff was going to reach out to someone about a potential business representative.
And I have done so. I expect that we'll probably get an application from somebody, so.
Okay. Yep. And I have a couple of people I could reach out to as well. But again, local business representative and community at large member. And I think Diana had talked about some social media posts potentially, or adding it to our newsletter this month. So if anyone has ideas or contacts, we are looking for someone for that position. And it's a pretty, as town committees go, it's a pretty enjoyable, having served on it myself a number of years ago, it's pretty enjoyable. It's not the school committee.
Unlike some other.
It's a few meetings, you get to read these amazing grants.
Yeah, very
You know, hear from people with really cool, innovative ideas and, you know, vote to approve or not approve them. So it's a pretty well-established committee, so I would encourage anyone listening to read our newsletter that I think is going to have a link to an application, but anyone is welcome to reach out to the school committee and we could forward them a Payne Grant application committee application.
So how often do the Payne Grant Committee meet? Is it throughout the year or the school year?
They meet like 3 times between April and May. Because it's a
Oh,
one-year
okay.
grant, the grants.
That's right, I remember
there's
that.
One grant cycle per year.
Yep, okay.
So I believe applications are due end of March, early April. The committee meets sometime, tell me if I'm wrong, sometime in April to review the grants. I believe they may get them electronically and review them. And they meet together, they hear presentations from the grant applicants. I don't know if they deliberate and vote that night, or maybe it's another meeting they deliberate and vote.
Depends on how many applications there are, how many nights they need.
I mean, the TWIG grants there are many more TWIG grants because those are
Yes.
small, and these are larger asks, I think over $10,000 to $15,000, so they're more substantial grants. And there's a more, because it's more money, there's more, you have to sign off from superintendent, and so
Right.
they're pretty well vetted by the time they get to the Payne Grant Committee. So, yes, it's not throughout the year. And you're done so then they make a presentation to us.
Right.
In May, very beginning of June.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a pretty light commitment
Okay.
of meetings and time commitment. Okay, so let me know if you have any ideas of people or ideas of how we could advertise this positions more widely. And Jeff was also going to talk to the high school principal about getting a high school representative for that committee as well. I believe it's a principal.
It's a principal appointment, and I had indicated, I think our last student served 2 years. So I had indicated to Mr. Mitchell to see if we could get someone who would do a 2-year commitment.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then given that we have no one currently to run that committee, I might reach out to everyone that's currently on the committee just to make sure they're willing to continue to serve.
Right, what did you say was the term? Did I miss that?
It's usually 2 years.
2 years, okay.
For the student and for,
And for the community, I did it as a 2-year. I don't,
Okay.
Jen, you were a business rep.
I was 2 years,
Two. Yeah.
yeah. But they're staggered, presumably. But I don't believe there's a term limit. I mean, you could do 4 years, 6 years, I would.
Know the policy by heart.
I don't think there's a term limit.
Okay. All right, and there's a finance committee member, a select board member, I believe. Any other questions on that Payne Grant Committee? Okay, I'm moving on to Whittier Tech appointment discussion. I also mentioned this in the announcements. I just wanted to update this committee. We have gotten 2 letters of interest so far. I did see an article in the local paper this week. I did submit a letter to the editor that did not get accepted, probably because they were writing an article, so it's pretty similar to what I said, so. And actually, the articles probably will get more visibility, I think, so. And I wanted to ask a couple things of this committee. I was hoping we could do perhaps interviews on our March 7th meeting, and then maybe a discussion and appointment on the following meeting in March 21st, instead of doing it all in one night. But
Yeah.
does that seem reasonable to people?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, the term's up March 31st, so that would still give us good time. And then I guess just wanted to talk briefly about how we think the interviews should work. we could have you send Jeff and myself questions, and then just have a short list of questions to ask candidates. And then I guess my last question is, should we solicit questions from other boards or just keep it to our questions? I mean, it's our appointment, but in some ways, it's an unusual
Affects the whole
position.
town, yeah.
It affects the whole town. Financing, so I didn't know if perhaps I could solicit questions, whether or not we use them, we could just solicit questions. I
Right.
mean, again, it's our
It won't
appointment,
hurt.
we can ask the questions
I
we
think
want.
you can. I think the insight that you get from some of their perspectives may help
Okay,
guide the questions.
if it's okay, I will reach out to the chairs of the Finance Committee and the Select Board to see if they have questions for us and give them a March 7th deadline.
Are we going to get the applications or the letters prior to March 7th?
Yes, yep.
Okay,
I was going to see, just kind of wait and see if others came in, but I'm
Okay.
happy to forward them to you
okay.
before that. Yep. And then the last thing about Whittier Tech is I had an idea that I wanted to run by this committee of, should we have we have liaison positions to various things. What do people think about if we had a school committee liaison position for Whittier Tech? And I'll explain it. The purpose of that, in my mind, would just be, so one of us would be that liaison position, and that person would be responsible for every month going to the Whittier Tech website, looking at school committee meeting agenda, reading their minutes, sort of every month, just to keep on tabs of what they're talking about, what's on their agendas, and then reviewing their capital plan and their budget when it gets posted online. Because just like any other school district, they have to post their budget online. They have to post their meeting minutes just like we do. So in my mind, would be pretty easy liaison position, and I think it would show that we're being proactive in not keeping tabs, but just doing our due diligence of seeing what they're talking about and making sure they're not missing anything, and that way we wouldn't have to 100% rely on our representative. We would be sort of doing our own homework. I like that idea.
Isn't that the expectation of the representative? I would also assume that they are coming here to provide us updates and
It's not, I
discussion on
can't
any of
find it
those.
written down anywhere, and in my 3 years on the committee, I have only had the Whittier Tech representative come once. Maybe that's because the rep hasn't been invited, but
I think we could.
clearly, I think there's agreement among the community that it hasn't been enough.
Yep.
So to me, this is another kind of way to just do a little bit legwork on ours. But I agree, I would love to have some more expectation of communication.
It does
on a
feel like an
regular
appropriate
basis.
expectation of a representative.
I agree.
Yeah, if we had a set schedule where they could come in every other month and, give us something. Right, I agree.
Be more inclined to set that expectation of the representative and hold them accountable to it. If it felt like it wasn't happening, let's adjust appropriately,
Okay.
rather than to suggest we
One
add
more
an
role
extra
for us, yeah.
responsibility. Yeah. Yeah, we're equally accountable there as well, to make sure that that's happening.
Yeah. Okay. Any other thoughts?
I agree.
Okay.
Quiet side is saying. And I think it depends on, if it's business as usual, maybe it's a quick email, or if it's a school building project, maybe we say, okay, we need more regular updates, but kind of like a back and forth.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think another thing that I had thought, as Kate knows, if there is something that, for the person to be proactive, if there is something that's larger coming up, a capital project or a new school perhaps, that they, even though they're not asked to be proactive and connect and have them put on the agenda, someone who is, wanting to keep us in the loop. I think that's an expectation too, is even if it's not their scheduled time to come in, if we do set a schedule, even if it's once every 6 months, that they need to be proactive in that second month and say, this is coming up. I need you to know, even if it's out of schedule.
That's fine. Okay. So, but I would like to at least keep the door open to a potential liaison position if we feel like we need it. Can't hurt to have two people, and then, just to me, that just puts 100% trust in that representative to report back to us everything.
Right.
And come when they're invited.
Right.
Which hopefully
They will.
find someone that does that,
Yeah.
because that would be great. All right. Anything else? No? Okay. I think we have policy update.
All right.
15 minutes ahead of schedule, just saying.
All right, we have 13 to review. So I'll just go in order of the folder. So starting with AA, minor rewording, no significant changes. And next, AB, pretty much no rewording, just updated the date. AC, this one, we just matched the MASC wording, but it wasn't really any significant practice changes. ACA, Kate, you had pointed out there was a paragraph that was duplicated, and I corrected that. Otherwise, no significant changes. ACE, also no significant changes. AD is our mission statement, which still holds true, so nothing's changed there. ADDA, just like minor reformatting. We confirmed that everything that it says it's doing, we are in fact doing. ADDAR, minor reformatting. LA, no real changes. LB, no real changes.
I had a question, sorry.
Yep.
Back on, sorry, I added these comments kind of late. Back to ADDA, background checks.
Okay.
I just added a comment down on bottom of the, oh geez, this is long. The bottom of the, I don't know, farther down. I'm green.
Yep.
I was just curious, I know all schools do plenty of what they need, they do enough. And they do query checks when they are needed. But my question is, are some schools doing it excessively when they don't need to be doing it?
Are schools in our district, or?
Yeah.
Well, I think we have a heightened standard that has become the expectation. Do other schools do query checks to the extent that we do? No. I think that was pretty clear when we went for our school visits
Right.
to other schools. We went to all of those schools, and we were never queried once nor asked about it.
But we also weren't, along with students, we didn't.
We make anybody that's coming
Right,
into
well,
our
that's what I'm
buildings.
saying. Are we
that's this.
doing more,
Yes.
and is it burdensome, is it a cost, or is it fine? And I mean, you don't have to answer.
Yeah,
that.
well,
just-
I think,
mean, I'm
you know,
not
define burdensome. When we have field day and we're asking every parent that is going to be helping with field day or coming to field day to be quarried, it's a lot, but then they end up on the list so that they don't have to be quarried again for a couple of years. But we are much more tight with it than other districts.
So as long as that's fine, and I'm not, I want to be as safe as we need to be. So I don't know. I guess the only thing I was thinking is, does this policy need to be redistributed to staff to remind them that this is what we need to do? And because I don't want excessive quarries that may be above and beyond what we need to do, creating more of a sense of security when there doesn't need to.
I don't think that's the case.
That's all. I just wanted to check.
And clear your comment.
Hmm?
I just cleared your comment. Okay. All right.
And the other piece to it too is that's now the expectation that people have in the district.
Right. I think we're on LBC. It was really reformatting. Kate, I see you have a question. Yes, we didn't understand what this was about either, but Dr. Blake enlightened us. So do you want to explain what this could be referring to?
Which one are we?
LBC, Relations with Non-Public Schools.
So this speaks to if a charter school wanted to open up in town, they would need to establish a relationship with us, you know, and go through a process. We also, by law, if we had a Catholic school in town, part of our federal funding would need to be considered for students in that school as well. So we essentially need to maintain relationships with any non-public schools. Short answer.
Okay, thank you.
All right. LDA, no major changes. And GBEBD. This is newly recommended by the MASC, and it gives guidance for online fundraising. And we reviewed it, and it looks to be what we're doing. We're not doing a lot of online fundraising.
I don't know.
Good. Okay, so that is all 13. So maybe we can vote on those, and then I have one more update about policy.
Yep, no, I had a question about the newsletter, but
Oh,
we're not there yet.
okay.
I think I'm good for policy. My computer just died, but it came back, so sorry for that.
App.
Took a nap. So, any questions on those policies, or do we have a motion to?
I move that we approve the policies in the policy update February 8th folder as reviewed.
Second?
Second. Was there a second?
Motion by Sasha, second by Kate.
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear you.
All in favor? 6-0.
All right. So before we move on, if I can use this opportunity to add one thing about policy. We reviewed a policy that is about a wellness policy, and it talks about a wellness committee, and we need to recruit for those positions. so similar to how we are recruiting for paying grant members and a Whittier school committee member. That was, we could put it in the newsletter and on social media. So when we get to the newsletter, it spells it out a little bit better. But it's related to a policy that will be eventually created by this committee that we need to fill the positions for. Great.
Okay, Superintendent, Administrative report.
Yes, so much of the last few weeks have been focused on the budget and my goal of presenting a defensible budget that meets the needs of our students. Over the last couple of weeks, attended the collaborative board meetings for both CREST and the North Shore Education Collaborative. Several meetings with staff members regarding a variety of issues. Most recently, yesterday, we have some changes in personnel that we need to move some folks around, so that was the most recent conversation. 3 weeks ago now, we needed to close the Paul F. Doyle Memorial School due to student and staff illness. During that, it was, it took a lot of time working with both our nursing staff here, the administration, and the health department around the messaging and the best course of action to make sure that we were covering all of our bases in terms of notifications and following the state protocols from the Department of Public Health, et cetera. The Mass Association of School Superintendents held its midwinter conference, which I attended in Marlborough. Topics included the MTRS reporting, Massachusetts Teacher Retirement System. They're having considerable concerns around the Commonwealth about districts not being up to date with their reporting. Proudly, Ipswich was one of about 20 districts that is up to date on all of our reporting, so kudos to the finance department here. I attended the last of the three-part series on negotiations that we talked about earlier in our executive session. The North Shore Superintendents met on January 26th for our monthly gathering. In addition to the monthly committee reports, we also spent time discussing ongoing negotiations in other districts and the difficult positions that the administrators in those districts are being put in. So it's an ongoing conversation as we see around the state the different situations that are coming up. So we spend a lot of time talking about that and how one another is managing to navigate through those situations. The past 2 weeks, as I said, we're focused on the budget and the budget presentations. Tom and I have been meeting on a regular basis to review the current budget, look at our revolving fund balances, and prepare for these sessions and any questions that come up. We've engaged with a company called ARCS Ed that was started by retired superintendents that will assist districts in the analysis of typically financial data around bargaining units. So they have a dashboard that has all of the bargaining unit contracts statewide in it, along with salary schedules and everything. So they're quickly able to help us with different types of analysis as we're going through the process. Several weeks ago, it was brought to my attention that there was an issue with the ventilation of the kilns here at the high school, and staff was concerned about their health. We've had 2 different sets of testing done to date. We did some, the regular indoor air quality testing that we would normally do, testing for mold and things like that. And just last Friday, we did a much more extensive specialized testing that tested for heavy metals and other contaminants. They were here after school on Friday last week. The indoor air quality test came back fine, with no indications of increased levels of mold in any of those spaces. We're awaiting the results of the other testing to come back from Boston. It was a very extensive process that they went through. We were very careful to replicate the conditions that were in existence when people were, were noticing that they were not feeling well. Certainly. That's fine. So we're waiting to hear those results back, but essentially what we did was we had them come in with everything functioning the way it should. Then we shut down the systems to replicate the ventilation that was happening at that time, and then they were here for 3 hours doing continuous readings in each of the 3 rooms, so that we know that we were able to replicate the situation as it was when folks were expressing concern. So when the results come back, we'll share those out and make whatever changes are necessary, if anything comes back. So right now, the kiln is not being used again until that those results come back. I talked about the reassignment of some staff members. The district-wide DEI team met yesterday to review the progress in each of the schools. All 4 schools are actively engaged in the No Place for Hate work. All the schools are working on their different activities. The high school is working on their 3rd activity to be recognized as a No Place for Hate school. Winthrop is finishing up their 1st one, and they have their 2nd one planned already. So they should also be able to finish by the end of the year in terms of obtaining that designation. The middle school is continuing to advance that work. They're doing a lot of work around restorative justice. And there's a lot of different activities going on at the Paul F. Doyle Memorial School as well. So very happy with the way the work is progressing, and the I don't want to say the buy-in, but the engagement of the students around it. Subcommittees that have met recently include budget, communications, mutual concerns, policy, and school facilities. Some of those reports you already heard this evening, and you'll be hearing about the rest of them shortly. I think that's it for this evening.
Questions for Dr. Blake? Subcommittee, working group, and liaison reports. We have a bunch, probably. Let's go first.
Newsletter. So this newsletter will go out February 27th. And I guess, do you want to keep the Payne Grant membership information in here?
Yes.
Okay. Yep.
Business rep, too? Jeff?
Yeah, they're both in there,
We'll keep
yes.
them both in there, yep. Yeah, I think that's good. Whittier, though?
That will be too late.
Yeah, when's it going? Sorry, going out the 27th? Yeah, I think it's,
Yeah.
I think I'd remove the Whittier stuff.
This was kind of just a notice that we were going to be appointing. It's not soliciting.
Not soliciting,
Yeah.
okay.
All right, so the application, Laura, I don't know how to link it to a document. Would you be able to link the Payne grant application? Thank you very much. And for the Wellness Committee, the regulations say the appointments to the committee should be made by the superintendent. So I just typed in there to send it to Laura, or is that the best course of action? Okay. And then my last question was, do we have a March 12th meeting? Is that confirmed yet?
It is not confirmed. I'm waiting to hear back from the Finance Committee. So I think, how's it worded now?
It's not in there, but we can add it, so,
I would just put it in there and we can strike it if we need to, because it's not going to go out for
okay.
10 more days.
I'll
or
just
2 more
make
weeks.
sure
I
it's
will know
all
by
good
the end of
before the
week.
27th.
Just put it in there with a T, tentative.
Okay. Great.
And did you can you change the tri-board meeting time to 7?
Yep.
7:30? And then, what else did I had a couple things on the newsletter. In upcoming district events, Tom, I just had a question on our budget calculator. It says we vote on our budget on February 29th. But then it also kind of says on our budget calendar, we could vote March 7th too, after our Finance Committee, or we vote.
So what that would be intended as a placeholder in case there is feedback that the Finance Committee gives you guys, that you want to revisit something.
Okay.
It gives us sort of a placeholder for that.
And then we could re-vote.
Correct.
Okay, got it. So yeah, so I think we will leave the,
There's not an expectation that there be a revote if nothing changes, but they could provide feedback and you could want to
Take it
reconsider
into-
that.
okay.
Excuse me.
So I think the language is fine then, as is.
Okay. Just because you brought up the tri-board, the Finance Committee presentations, those are 7:30?
I think so, because I think they traditionally meet at 7:30. So yeah, I'm pretty sure it's 7:30. I did confirm the tri-board is at 7.
Okay.
With Sarah Blair today. So my only other feedback on the newsletter is at the tiles on the bottom with the social media. Is there a way to change the brown one that says, "You may speak at public comment"? That seems a little, I don't know why. You may speak.
Right.
I feel like it feels a little more like you are welcome at public
We
comment.
look forward to hearing from you.
Yeah, it seemed a little bit.
Yeah, you know what?
You may speak seems a little.
We could even, I mean, it's been there. We could take it out or just put even the follow us, like with, I
And
can
I'm
change
fine
it.
with the spirit of it. It's
Yeah,
just the "you may
it's
speak"
getting-
sounded a
It's
little.
getting stale, I feel like.
Soften it a little bit.
I'll just,
a little
yeah,
bit. I
shorten
trust
it.
you.
Yeah. Okay.
We will grant you permission to speak. Seems.
Thanks.
Yeah. Other than that, I think it looks good. Do other people have feedback on the newsletter? So we're changing the stuff about Payne Grant Committee to
She's
not submit
gonna,
letters of interest to me. It'll say fill out this application.
Okay.
And send to
send to, where does it go?
you, maybe, if you're a Payne Grant person. Yeah, send them to you.
Me? Oh. Okay.
You don't have to do anything with them except collate them and bring them to.
Send them to you.
Nope, I delegated to you. Other comments on the newsletter? Or other communication?
That is it?
Other committee updates?
Facilities has met a couple times. Our focus has really been on the 2024 SOI submissions. We've begun preparing the 2024 documents for both Doyon and Winthrop, including discussions around which priorities we select. Last year, we selected, the priority is really the main driver for the need. Last year, we selected number 2, which was response to severe overcrowding, and number 7, which is around obsolete buildings. I feel like those still applied. 2 others that we are considering and we've been discussing are around prevention of future overcrowding with influx of students in coming years, particularly with 3A. We're determining whether we have enough information to include that or not. And then there is another question, or another priority specifically around decreasing energy-related costs. Again, evaluating if that would be appropriate for us. Of the schools that were accepted this year, do you remember the number that had, the majority of the schools had that one selected, so we're looking into what specifically did they reference in that piece that might apply to us that would help bolster our case and to better demonstrate the need.
What was that second one that was preventing future overcrowding, and what was the second one?
The second one was around avoidance of increased energy costs or decreasing energy-related costs in the school facility. It's priority number 5.
Was there discussion around how many boxes? Too many to check off? I mean, is it okay to check off 4, or does that make our SOIs?
We felt the 2 from last time still made sense, and then we're
Considering.
we have a follow-up next time to discuss specific details around each of them. We didn't want to discuss it in the abstract. We wanted specific information of why we would or wouldn't select them.
Okay.
Other schools, I feel like 2 or 3 was on average, right? Of the
Okay.
schools that were accepted this last round, I think,
I don't think any of them had 4.
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So the prevention of overcrowding would also include a potential Bruni's project in addition to 3A, right? I mean,
I'm less
That's farther
comfortable
along
with
than-
that one because it's not state mandated like the 3A is. That, to me, gets to be a little bit speculative. It'd be the same as saying, we're expecting however many new homes to be built, and
but it's much farther along, whereas the 3A is just zoning. 3A seems harder
Feels like-
to predict because it's farther out. But I think we should think about both. And I have tried to attend several 3A task force meetings and forums, and I keep not being able to. So I would love it if anyone has an interest in that and would be interested in attending one of their meetings and getting a better sense of that, reading their materials. Andrea Bates, the assistant town planner, has been very good about including me on the invitations, and maybe it's to all of us, I can't remember, but, I'm well aware of when those are, so if there is anyone that's interested in that, I would love it if they would.
that's helpful. We did talk about a follow-up. We don't have we don't have a recommendation on those yet. It was more of, we've started to discuss. Let's figure out determine more information that would help us make that decision. We'll bring it back to this group.
How are we feeling timeline-wise, given that we're not meeting again till February 28th? And, I don't know, they're due April 12th, and I don't know.
Yeah,
I just want to make sure we aren't
Our
up
plan is to
against
bring it
the-
back to completed drafts to this group the first week in our first meeting in March.
Yeah.
7?
Thank you, yeah. So we're meeting probably a couple times before then. Already got the next one. Yeah, 2 times before then.
Other questions for facilities? Right, I have a quick one. Strategic Planning Committee met last night. This is the group that is tasked with redoing the townwide strategic plan. So we met last night. It was a good group, a small group. It's a finance committee member, select board member, school committee, I think 3 citizens, and then the town manager was there. So there's just 7 of us. We're working to get an updated document within 12 months for sure, but hopefully sooner. So we talked about like what our strategy would be, what our criteria would be for including things, how we're going to gather information of what to put in that. So I think our next meeting, which is right before the tri-board in a few weeks, we will be discussing, looking at the last strategic plan document that was from October 2020 and sort of looking at those projects and seeing which are still in play and where are they, and as a sort of a starting point. And then try to set up a schedule to meet with department heads like, Vicki Hallman from wastewater, water and wastewater, and people from the ELD, and just sort of get input on things. So it was a good meeting. I think it's a good group, a nice diversity. Jim Engel's on it, who brings a nice, a lot of experience in the utilities and stuff. So he's got a good perspective. So you will probably be invited to a couple meetings at some point, but not for a while. Maybe not even till the fall, I don't know. But we certainly will have things on the strategic plan. It's things like, we essentially decided it's anything that's going to come to the taxpayer for money. Overrides, major, anything that's going to involve debt service, debt exclusion things. So schools, any overrides in the future will be on that. And it's really a visionary 10 to 15-year outlook on plans to try to sequence things and give the taxpayers a sense of what the big ticket items over the next 10 to 15 years are, and a way to sort of sequence them. And I don't think there's a way to really minimize tax impact, but at least explain the tax impact and sort of make it as stable as we can. So it was a good meeting. Anyone else?
Mutual concerns met recently. One thing that stands out that will be at a future meeting this spring is that we've only met twice this year. We just had some scheduling issues. But at our October meeting, it was brought to our attention that the kindergarten teachers in both elementary schools would like us to take a look at moving kindergarten evaluations to the end of the school year instead of during the school year, where they have to go to the library wherever they are off-site to do the kindergarten screenings and then pay for a sub and potentially be out of school. So they've asked us to, as a committee, to look at changing the way we do kindergarten screenings and the time of year it happens. So that will be coming to this committee at the end of March, I believe. And then something that was new to the meeting, was it just yesterday? Yesterday, was two educators one from middle school, one from high school, special education teachers who just had concerns and wanted it addressed, just, I guess, extra support around some of the physical stuff that they deal with in special ed, and how to just better support them. They do a lot of work. And I think Dr. Blake is going to get together a committee to look at how they can be better supported. That's it.
You had STEAM team meetings?
Oh yeah, a couple of weeks ago. And we have one next week as well. So, yep.
You know when the date of it is? May something? Sorry.
It's in my calendar.
That's great.
Okay.
Tell us next time.
Okay.
All right, anybody else? All right, new business, kind of already covered. Any other new business? Vouchers and bills? Consent agenda? Move the Ipswich School Committee to approve the following: meeting minutes from January 18th, 2024, meeting minutes from January 31st, 2024, a check in the amount of $800 from Gregory Insurance Agency to be used for the Racing Challenge to be deposited in the high school gift account, and donations totaling $6,350 from Ipswich Car Wash, Agawam Restaurant, Tetrault Jewelers, Ipswich Education Foundation, Ipswich River Dental, and Ipswich Shellfish Company to be used for the Racing Challenge to be deposited into the high school gift account.
Second.
All in favor? 6-0. All right. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, moved by Diana, second by Jenny. All in favor? Nothing. Thank you very much. Good night,
Night,
Ipswich.
Ipswich.